superintendents, Bob Cotton, Tom Croteau, Brenda Hastings, Pamela Walsh, superintendent Kathleen Murphy, and business administrator Jack Dunn. And Jack, do you want to get us started about the school lunch program?
Sure. First, this is the location of this in your either Google Drive, it's in Teams as well, and then those that are on the committee. And the agenda will start off first with the school lunch program, talk about state adequacy, and then an update for HVAC, including a big update that I got about an hour and a half ago. So, I'll hit you with it. So I expect this to take about 3 hours tonight. We figure you'd get hit right hard, right back into it. Mm-hmm. I'm just kidding. I know Sarah's watching at home, so I thought she heard it. I'm like, oh, she's doing the minutes. Anyway.
Is she?
Yeah.
Good.
So for the school lunch program, there's the program unaudited. We're still working through everything, but right now it looks like it had expenses of $2.3 million and revenue of $2.265 million. So currently has a difference of $43,000. Now, what is not in there is the entry, which I am going to ask for you to make a recommendation, of the $61,132.02 of outstanding student debt. So when that revenue comes back, then the food program will be positive, believe it or not. Okay. We also had to do a transfer for $14,624.99 to cover the fresh fruit and vegetable program. So for those that may have remembered, there was several years ago, Tom shaking your head. Mm-hmm. Brenda, I don't know if you were here for that one, were you? When there were two schools that were not funded at all, and you funded that. It was about $50,000. Well, what happened was we had two schools that ran out of their funding. They used all their allocation. Historically, they would allow us to move from schools that didn't use it to schools that did use it. They didn't allow that. So the general fund had to pick up those expenses. Now, I'm trying to determine whether that was something because there's all new people over at the state and they're interpreting the law differently than what was allowed, or it was never allowed, and that is the law. So either way, we need to clean it up because they have told us no, but we're going to try to fix that. We don't expect this issue to have this issue going forward. So we need the committee to recommend to the full board to fund that debt, and I have a slide later on because we're going to talk about meal debt. Okay. Yeah.
I was just going to ask if
Would anyone like to make a motion?
I will make that motion.
Moved by Mr. Croteau. Is there a second? A second?
Would you like me to read it out loud, or is it okay?
I think you should
You
read it.
should read it out loud?
Yes.
Okay. The proposed motion would be that we move the Finance Committee recommend that the school board authorize the transfer of $61,132.02 to the Food Service Fund to cover outstanding meal debt and affirm the transfer of $14,624.99 to cover the cost of the fresh fruit program, fresh fruit and vegetable for September, May, and June.
Any discussion? Questions? Is that September 22 or September 23?
September 23 and May, June 22.
Can we clarify that?
Sure.
You accept that?
Absolutely.
And I'll refix the motion when you're done to say May 22, June 22, September. I'm sorry. Yes. It's prior fiscal year. Either way, I will clarify.
Okay.
Do we know how many students that 61,000 represents? Is it a small group or a large, spread all over?
I can get you that data. I mean, you're going to see by the numbers, because it's broken down by school.
Yeah.
I'm just repeating you the June, so you could see what it was June 26th, and it's moved very little since then. But I want to talk about that process, but I will give you that. Overwhelming majority of it is paid status.
And I know that we sent letters and everything last year. Do we have the school counselors or the social workers following up with families that get asking them?
So when I get to debt, I'll talk to you about what we do as it
Okay.
relates to applications and reaching out. Is that okay?
Okay.
Alright.
Do we want to vote on the motion, or do we want to wait until the rest of the presentation?
Fine if you vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is
Okay.
approved.
I also wanted to just reiterate that the prices did go up at the elementary and the middle by 25 cents for the lunch only, and that was approved at your school board meeting on August 7th. So that's just more informational.
Related to that, and this may have been fixed, but I heard from some parents that the old school lunch payment vendor was the link on the website. I didn't check that, but you might want to just double check and make sure the new website has the right link.
I pull right from it today, so but I
Okay.
will verify.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but the
I've been on
link
it,
to
so I don't know
pay,
what-
you
Uh-huh.
know,
Was
Yep.
this recent? Did you?
it was a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Okay, we'll check.
Yep. Okay. All right, handout number 1. I'll start out with that. So in front of you, you should see something like this. This is a flyer that we sent out early last year prior to the meals being charged again. And then you should have a stapled packet that begins "It's more than a meal" application. And this is the application that went home, should have gone home with every student today. Okay. The feds also require us to have our meal charging policy in there, which we'll get into, as well as a paper application to every home, K to 12.
I saw it got sent home electronically, but they were supposed to get a
It
hard.
could be in the mailbox.
Okay.
I might get it by November.
Bottom of the book bag.
Check those homework folders.
I did.
Yeah, we had Glenna print them, and they were all to be distributed and sent home.
So the actual application is the green page, is
Yes.
that right?
Yep, it's the instructions before that.
Doesn't look very user-friendly.
It doesn't.
It's a
It's very
lot.
intimidating.
Yeah.
Hence why you probably saw at Keach Park, the assistance that happened and with that.
I was gonna ask, what are we doing to translate this or make it more accessible
So-
for especially our new Americans?
Yep. So what happens is we have 30 operating days from the prior year to carry over what their status is. So if they were free or reduced, they carry over. So that would end October 16th. We let this go out for the first couple weeks. Gets out to everybody. We see the applications come in online, which I'll show you. They come in through paper, and they can also come to our office. And what we do is once we extract all the direct certifications, which I'll show you the different statuses we have as of today. Direct certification is when the state sends us because they're eligible for state benefits, they're automatically eligible. They don't need to do this. So those come off the list. And then what we do is by school, we break it down and list the parents, all the students that we didn't get anything from, and reach out to the schools between guidance counselors, social workers, and principals, because they're more direct boots on the ground. They hear from us, it's not as, and we do the calls too and the emails from the system. But really, they're the ones that help get those numbers.
Will they have that information by the opening, the back-to-school nights?
Yeah, we
Because I'm
can.
thinking, a lot of schools I
Yep.
know provide translation services at those events. And if the principals and the staff knew who those parents were, or who those families were, they could maybe, and I
Yep.
think we get a pretty good attendance at those events,
Yeah.
so it might be a great way to catch a few and catch up.
And like I said, we have now, I think his number is 831 or 813. You're going to see it in a minute. That's how many there are right now that have already filed application or direct cert or approved. So we already know what that is.
Out of how many?
Well, 14 to 1600
Okay.
is what we run for our ADM.
Or maybe halfway there.
Yeah, and that's about normal this time of year.
Okay.
Okay. So just so you see what the complete package is, and this is all required for us to give. And in that packet, which we'll begin to talk about, is your charging policies. Yeah.
Is there anything special you do for like kindergarten and first grade when parents are just starting to come into the school system?
Besides the contacts at the school or that we have to mail at home, the principal, social workers, that's it. We don't do anything any different that I'm aware of unless they're doing it, and I don't know, that's a question I'd have to ask, when they do the Title I, the kindergarten program. I don't know if there's something that goes out with that when they do that in the summer.
I wonder if, when you do the follow-up letter, if you could do a mock-up of this, just to show that it's not that intimidating. It looks like it's very intimidating, just with all the spaces and lines.
Yep.
But if you put John Smith in there, you might find that some people are less intimidated.
Like do a sample.
Yep.
That's a
Yeah.
good idea.
I like the letter. I just, knowing we were gonna talk about this tonight, I text my daughter in Reading, because they had sent a letter out, she had talked to me about it during vacation, and it was really well worded, so that they really encouraged everybody to get, to do it. And ours is very, very similar. Good letter.
No, they're in Mass.
Pardon?
They're in Mass, Massachusetts. So we'll talk about that a little bit as we get into the free meals.
Theirs is everybody, yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about that impact.
Yeah, they're
because we've-
supplying free
Yeah.
for everybody all the time.
Yeah.
But their letter is well written in that it really encourages folks to sign up so they can keep it going.
And we're gonna talk about why we believe they do that, and that's why, if this is something you really wanna investigate, we
I
gotta do
actually raised an
more.
eyebrow or two about it myself.
Yes.
But it's not just Mass, we have Vermont and Maine on both sides of
I was
us.
gonna say, there's
They're
8
doing
states
it
now
too,
that
right.
provide.
8
free-
states, right.
Yeah.
Minnesota, I think, is another one.
I don't know
Yeah,
which
out
8.
Midwest, yeah.
Okay,
New
So-
York.
that was that. Now we get into the outstanding debt, as I mentioned, the transfer you just recommended, the 61,132. That's as of today. But what we did is all the debt is cleared off all the accounts. Because we let it roll, it's going to continue to multiply. Also, we have to satisfy that debt. That's why you did that transfer. This food service program, even though it has a surplus, cannot pay that debt. The general fund has to pick that up, and it has to be at zero. You cannot carry that debt forward in the food service program. So, as Brenda was saying about, or what one was asking about the breakdown of what they are, this is about what it is by school and by their status, the free, reduced, and paid. But we can get the numbers, sure. I can give you the numbers too, what that means. But this is the highest I've seen it in my now 11 years. And even if I count board service, I've never seen it this high. But when you're coming off of 2 free years, it's, and what as we talk about now, the charging policy and where we go with this, because this is where we need guidance as far as what to do. In that packet, the last 2 pages is policy 326, which is the charging policy that was put in place in 2015. And I think the overall gist with this, and you can read through it, is K-8, we feed them regardless. In the high school, we go 2 weeks in and then we stop. And then we stop at the high school. But there is a provision in here as it relates to small claims court for these outstanding balances. We've never used it. But I don't know what you want. I mean, if there's no recourse, I don't know when this is going to stop. That's the problem. And if you want the general fund to continue picking this stuff up, I mean, you have some that don't pay all year, and you have some that have certain outstanding balances. I've had a recent person come in to look to pay $8,000 towards it, and when we had the previous donation right before COVID of $15,000, we targeted all the free and reduced first to wipe them out because paid. And then what we would do is we had a thing, we went through it with them. We would start looking at those that applied and maybe didn't get approved. We do those first. And then we had a list of criteria, but ones that just blatantly don't.
This policy
Yep.
in English language might be good to send just to parents. I know of one family that they sent lunch with their kid every day, so they didn't think of it, they didn't set up an account, and at the end of the year they got a bill because the kid got milk every day.
Yep.
And they paid their bill. But other families this might be a bill all of a sudden that shows up in June that they can't pay and they didn't know that they were incurring. So to make it clear that, like, even if you're sending lunch with your kid, they may be getting milk or getting other items that you're responsible for.
Yep.
I think would be a good thing.
I mean, the system does do regular notifications of balances. We do phone calls. We do send letters home. But if no recourse, what do we do? And the
Well,
other
when we
question
send
is,
the letters, it might not be a bad idea to make sure we send this policy with it.
right,
So they
and
understand.
that's why this year they're mandating it goes with the free and reduced application.
Yeah.
Do you have
But-
any thoughts on why Rundlet is the way it is?
I don't.
Can they buy a la carte at Runlet?
We shut them off according to the policy. If they don't have money, we don't sell it to them.
They can have a regular lunch, but not a la carte.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that we feed them regardless, but a la carte, no.
Okay.
And can
We
they
shut
get
that off.
seconds
If they have money.
if they have money?
Yeah. Again, it's tough to benchmark this against when it was free 2 years prior.
And I wonder if that's lingering.
Yep, and I mean, you saw
Kids whose
free
parents
meals
were
are no
sending
longer
lunch.
available. This went out the beginning
Yeah.
of last year, but and as much as we do the notifications and the blasts, people start realizing, hey, there's no recourse.
And it's the combined families from the elementary schools. When they get to Runlet, you're looking at one school when we are looking at all of the other numbers from
Yep.
the elementary schools.
And then you see
Well,
why the high school's so
yeah,
low, because we
yeah.
cut that off. Otherwise, you'd probably be double what Runlet is.
Oh, okay.
I'm guessing, just because what's the bigger kids, bigger eating. So, so right now, what'll happen is the general fund owns that debt, and now what do I do? Do I just we're eating it, or do I pursue trying to collect it?
I'm personally not comfortable taking families to small claims court, but I would like to see greater outreach. And I know that you've been doing a lot, but maybe it's the school social workers reaching out to the parents of the paid lunch to see if, make sure they're filling out the application. I guess the question for free and reduced is, do we need to put stricter criteria on what they can get if they're still racking up debt, even though at least free is provided? Although those are relatively small numbers in the grand scheme of things.
Right. That's
It's,
definitely the pay.
I remember going over this policy a few years ago, and we had the same concerns that, it's typically not the kid's fault, they're hungry, especially middle school kids, and, so I wonder if could we include this with a short explanation in the letter that goes home? Is that pushing it too hard in somebody's face, or, these are taxpayer dollars that are being asked to pick
And
up
I
the-
do worry that if we don't try and collect, then it becomes,
And everybody will.
right.
That's my concern. So if I let this go this year, then when's it stop? Or if you decide to let it go, because as of right now, I can execute on that policy because you have that in place, but we've never done it. The numbers we've either had a donation or it's been negligible, but now this is high.
I guess I would like to know, like, if it's a small group of kids who are racking up the largest part of the debt, because that seems like, if it's a 10%, then that just seems like we just need really concerted outreach to those families in both getting on free and reduced lunch Or if you can, paying your debt and offering payment plans.
Yep.
Um,
Well, and that's the other thing. Maybe not small claims, but what if I contract with a service company and we just turn it over, and whatever they collect, they collect?
Oh, they're worse. I'm sorry.
Well, it does take the threat of Concord School District taking people to court out of the picture.
I mean, you basically have a 0% all year. You can go all year, and its policy even has that. You know, once you get to the end of the year, then we expect to pay it.
Can
Even if
we,
you give a notice and had 30 days, you know.
going forward, can we get a picture of what's happening, say, every couple of months
Oh, sure.
during the school year, just to kind of see
Yeah,
where we're
I could
going?
probably just include it with the financial report. It's fine.
Um,
It doesn't take long to dump it out.
And
But
then we don't need names, but any indication,
Oh, yeah.
do
Can't
you
give names.
know the families and are you in contact with the families
Yeah.
that, 3 months in have already
Right.
racked
Yeah.
up quite a bit?
Would we do similar to the middle school in terms of the elementary school? Do we, I know they don't have as much a la carte, but they have some. Do we block access to any of that?
We've talked about doing that. But again, it becomes one of those things. The kid is free or reduced, and the parent made that lunch that day, and all they wanted was a milk. Do we shut all that off? We can do it.
Because
We know their
they
status.
don't get milk if they don't get the lunch.
You have to get the full meal. It's the only way it's reimbursable and counts.
Is there a way to figure out focusing on the paid?
Yeah.
Is there a way to figure out what it's for? If
Yeah.
it's for
Yep.
a la carte or
Correct.
lunch itself?
And I want to say it's mostly be lunch because under the policy we cut all that off.
For elementary too? I'm asking.
No, for
Middle school.
middle school and high school, I think that's what we do.
Yeah, the
I'm on my- yeah,
elementary though is pretty much a
Remember I
lunch.
talked about it.
Elementary's a lunch. There's very little a la carte, and
Yeah, see, when a student reaches a negative balance, no a la carte items may be charged to the account. We do cut it off. Yeah, we talked about it today. But elementary, I don't think you have that line, because again, it's just milk. I don't think they have ice cream out there.
No.
I'm trying to,
at
Very
the
limited.
elementary they don't, but they do at the middle.
Oh, yeah, they have more options.
And they'll eat
there.
that
Yeah,
instead of their
absolutely.
lunch.
Yeah.
You
we
made a
don't-
comment, your last comment, Pam, I was trying to,
If we knew whether it was a la carte or paid
yeah,
or
Yeah.
full lunch.
yeah, okay. I'm trying to think of all the data that we can get.
So I think what I've heard is we want to report every few months the number of students that
That are negative.
are negative.
Mhm.
And and I guess in percentages, is it 20% of the students have 60% of the debts, so that we have an understanding of where
Sure.
we need to
That
Yeah.
if it's just a few
Yeah, I mean,
kids.
I
target
guess
our
I
efforts.
think one thing that'd be helpful would just to know whether, it's spread over a wide number of people,
Yep.
or are there 10 people that owe
Right.
2,000 each.
And if,
Um,
yeah. And if it's a lot of milk or if it's paid lunches or,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep, we do that.
And I guess the question, at least in the middle school, is can we get a sense on the paid versus the a la carte? Like, do we need to cut off a la carte? Like, you can only get a la carte if you have a balance in your account versus paid.
That's the way it works now. They can't put it on their account if it's negative.
Oh, I thought you said they could go 2 weeks.
The high school is we go 2 weeks. So the second Friday in September, we cut them off, and then
Okay.
they can't do anything.
So the first 2 weeks of the school year, they can,
Yep,
but
they can
it's
get
not
meals.
always 2 weeks, it's just the first 2 weeks of the school year.
That's what we do.
And
Yeah.
and so for the middle school, it's a la carte. You
Yeah, if
have
they
to
don't have
have a
money.
balance in your account. Okay.
Yeah.
So on the heels of that, would we like to consider, a lot of variables in that question, doing a capped amount so that if we have people who are at $500, let's say, or higher, that we pursue those in a small claims setting. I mean,
And we do have those.
I mean, it's one thing for the Concord School District to be sympathetic to children wanting to eat, and we are, and being sympathetic to folks who are having a struggle, and we are. But it's another when it approaches $500 or more.
Yeah, leastways, there ought to be a conversation.
I think so. You know, with the whole board perhaps, and
We'll get you that data, and then
you know, if we've got folks who are $500, $600, $700, $800 or more, maybe they need to be treated a little differently. I'm not sure. I'd love to hear the rest of the boards.
I guess the concern I have is are those the kids who need lunch the most?
It may be, that's why we ought to have. a
Yeah,
conversation.
no, I agree.
And-
I wonder if there's other things we could do to get, and my focus is really on like, let's get those applications in.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you're able to tell us how many of the students on that list applied and weren't eligible
Sure.
versus how many applied.
Yep.
But also wondering whether there's things we could do, like withhold report cards until they've met with the school social worker.
We've
on-
tried
on
that,
type of
haven't
thing.
we?
that was a conversation
We
in
have.
2015.
Um,
It was harming the kid. That was what we were trying.
Well,
that
I
was
feel
the
like
focus.
holding the report
Right.
card.
They talk about field trips, report cards, athletics, and we're like,
Report,
they went around and around and
report
felt.
cards are meaningful to who?
Kim White said, "That's a good
Parents
idea."
is what I think. I feel like parents care about report cards more than kids. I don't know. Depends on the parents. Depends on the kid.
I was gonna say, they're not too worried about the meeting, I guess they're not be too worried about the report.
Exactly.
I'm wondering, do we remind families that should their circumstances during the year change, that they can apply at any point during the year for this?
We do. I mean, it's not a consistent message that goes out, but yeah, any status that changes. There's
You
a
might wanna
variety.
remind schools every once in a while, just to send that out to parents, if your circumstances have changed, don't think because you didn't qualify in the fall that you might not qualify now. Let us know, let us ask, we'll tell you if we can help you with that.
Yeah, I guess. I wonder if we have any data on like, is it all year that these kids are struggling to pay, or does it happen in?
Oh, we have
waves?
dates that they applied, and each time they do apply.
No, I mean like they're
Their
running
debt.
up their debt.
Did it happen after the holidays? Did something happen in that family and the family didn't realize they could apply except at the, maybe they think they can only apply at the beginning of the year, which
Sure.
isn't the case either, so.
And are we doing everything we can to be sure that youngsters are not identified
Yeah, that-
when
yeah.
they receive that meal? or-
Well, even when we share up with guidance counselors and all, we don't give them their status. We just list. Like these are all the kids, like with the applications, we'll list all the ones that haven't filled out an application. But they're everybody.
But in terms
Because
of
we-
But physically
in
at the
terms of
lunch
the
line.
cafeteria, they all have a card.
They all look the
Nobody
same.
knows.
They all look the
Nobody
same.
knows.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So, which is why it's other than the choice of lunch at the middle or high school, it seems like
Yeah, we don't.
was
there's
just-
not the stigma that
Can't.
like there
Good.
used to be
I was
when
just
I was
trying
a
to make
kid.
sure there was nothing on
There's no peanut
that
butter and
end
jelly
that-
or sun butter and jelly separate meal anymore.
Right,
They
right.
all get the same meal.
Actually, some butter and
Choose
jelly is
sandwich.
almost always a choice, but
Well,
it's a choice.
If somebody doesn't want it, but it's not like you got that meal. That means you
Yeah.
didn't have.
Right.
It's not that anymore.
Right.
But yeah, but you don't have the special card.
Yeah.
either. They all have
Right.
cards.
Yeah, and we have spoken with the principal of both the middle school and the high school about what can we do differently, especially with Jay coming from where he came from and explaining what they did there. So, we'll see.
Good.
Well, I know we try to be careful about sharing that type of information in terms of kids who are owing balances who might need help. I feel like the guidance counselors and the social workers in the school are better outreach contacts than the nutrition services department. Like, you see a letter from nutrition services, like, maybe I'll open it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
yeah, it just, it doesn't have the same, as a call from a social worker. Listen, we noticed you have a balance. Can I tell you how we can help?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's better that it come from there, and not to make them collection agents, but to get them
Agreed.
kids help.
I'm gonna ask, Fern Seiden, our Director for Student Wellness, who
Yeah.
works with social workers and school counselors, to meet with them, made a note here, talk about ways in which they can help with this issue. So I think you're right, you need a personal touch, and that needs to come from those folks, who they know and who they know are in the building and are care about the best interests of the youngster, so.
Going back to what was suggested earlier, I think it would be helpful, at least this group, maybe every 2 months or every 3 months at the most, get an update on where things stand and whether there's a trend. And I like Tom's suggestion that if we have big problems that stand out, I mean, those ought to be looked at and decided whether, there's a way to help the people or whether they're just blowing us off, frankly.
So having a full year post-COVID, because you have 2 years of nothing, then in 1 year, we'll be able to benchmark going into this year. Within the first 30 days, we're going to know how we're trending, because we'll have the data from last year if they were negative, and they're already running up this year, so we'll have that to benchmark as well. But we'll provide that information as we go through the year, sure.
Great.
Okay?
It's a tough one. It's
It
always
is-
a tough
it is
one.
But you can see 61, 636 as on 626, and then he went down a little more than $500.
You gotta remember, some of your schools, not some, all of your schools have pantries. A couple of your schools are actually delivering food on Fridays, bags of food, basic staples, rice, peanut butter, that kind of thing, macaroni and cheese. So, that food insecurities are still a problem, and so I think it sort of filters down into our food service. But I think we have to do a better job, at least continue to try. I mean, I know they're working hard on it, but we need to continue to do that with a personal touch. But we do have food insecurity issues in the district. I know you know that.
But again, if we do, we should know that, and if they're not signed up for whatever reason,
Right.
get them signed up.
Right. Right.
I mean, that's where I would like to focus our resources and attention, as opposed to collections and small claims court at this
Yeah.
point. I mean, if there are people who obviously have the means to pay and choose not to, then we can have, different discussion. But I think we need to do a lot more.
Right.
And if they have the means to pay and they choose not to pay, and well, that's a different discussion.
That's
altogether.
correct. That's right. That's right. That's a tougher discussion.
Okay.
All right.
Tonight I'll go to the next slide, as far as pay options, so that people understand how to get to the information. You have the option to pay through check, so they can drop it off at the school, or for the middle and high school, the students can take it right to the cashier in line, and they'll send it here. They can also drop off or mail a check right here to central office, or they can go on the link Connect and set up an account and pay online. And there's fees associated with that, which are all transferred to the parent. And then for access to all of it, whether it's the link, the applications, it's the and menus, is at the school nutrition and fitness.sau8.org, or they can go to sau8.org and click our school department, school nutrition, or they can go right on the main page and you'll see a big icon on the bottom that says school menus and payment.
Is there a cash option?
If they want to bring cash here, sure.
Still have the envelope?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
still do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that should be included. I mean, I don't think we should underestimate that we have unbanked citizens, and
Sure.
a check.
We
isn't
do accept
necessarily-
cash. I mean,
Ne-
they've talked about trying to go cashless, but
I-
I don't think there's going to be a way to do that.
I
Can
think
they
we
use
should just
Venmo?
Put that on there.
Venmo?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we could if we want to set up a district account and accept that way too, sure. But
That wouldn't be a bad idea.
Maybe we
One
should.
click.
But again, that doesn't really solve the
No.
unbanked problem.
No, well, no, that doesn't.
True,
but-
because you need an account
but
to
like
send it
credit
from.
card, right?
Or a
But
credit card.
cash, and I guess, why don't we accept the cash at the elementary, cash or check at the elementary schools too?
No,
No,
we
it
do.
just says the middle and high school.
Well, the check. Well, we don't expect the little kids to come in. They'll usually give it to the front office of their teacher because they're just going through the line. They can.
At the high school and middle school, you can go through the line and pay the
Oh.
cashier as
That's
opposed
all.
to going into the office and.
Yeah, it just cash is on there, and I think like parents who can't might, they can walk into the office and
Give them.
Yep.
give them cash for
Sure.
the week or something.
Yep.
And
And
so
we do have
we should
that.
make sure people understand that's an option, is what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Yeah.
Even if it's not our preferred option, people should know
I
it's
see
an
the
option.
cash bags every day. But yeah.
I bet it used to be.
Oh yeah, no, we still have them.
Yeah.
We still get them. Checks in there and cash. Yep. So, okay. All right. So, if I can move on to the concept of developing a quote free meal program. So, I only took a portion of the adequacy. I took two components: the average daily membership district wide, which are the first three columns, and then what the free and reduced ADM is. So those that are free and reduced out of our total. And what they mean, what they translate into is dollars. So you can see we get a large portion of our adequacy from just our average daily membership of students. In 2019, it was $36.06 per student. You go down to the current year with the new legislation, it's now $4,100 per student. But if you look at the ADM, you're at 41.47. Now you're down to 37.28 in the district. If we move over to the ADM line, it was 15.93 that year in 19. It was 18.02 per kid that we received. Now we're down to 14.52, up from 14.07. Now, if you look, the two prior years were free years, right? I'm sorry. Yeah, before, before FY23, so 21 and 22, and look at your application. The reason you were 1470 is because we were held harmless by the state. So what would that number truly be? Well, I'm going to have to dig deeper to see what would it have been, because that would be your benchmark to look at getting a free meal. If you wanted to go to that, what happened to your applications during those years?
Well, if you look at fiscal year 20.
Yep, which would have been the pandemic year, but not till
March.
March.
And free, you're right.
But look how high
And
that number is.
The numbers are similar to fiscal year 24.
Correct.
I mean, we're not off that much on a percentage of student. Actually, I think it's like 38% in 19
Yep.
and this year of students. So
Mhm.
we're off on your numbers, but we're not on a percentage basis. We're
No.
still at the same place
Mhm.
we were pre-COVID in terms of percentage of students applying and receiving free and reduced lunch.
And again, 21, 22, with them being 3 years, what would the actual numbers have been? Because they
Right.
held everybody harmless. I'll have to see if I can pull that out and see, because that would give you an idea. But you could see we're almost the 18.669 in FY20. You're at 18,626,000 in FY24. Yeah, there's other components. There's third grade reading and special ed, but I just wanted to focus on those because as we talk about it, with the free and reduced column in the next slides, this is where you're going to start to see every kid you lose in that ADM is $2,300 a kid. What would this mean if we offered free? What is the incentive to fill out the application?
What are the other states doing? Do you know offhand?
We don't.
But a lot of them don't their school funding formula may not be based on free and reduced lunch. And I know the federal government is moving away from that in some places too.
Well, you think about, I'll pick on Massachusetts, but they have an income tax. So they know what people's income is, right? And they know, so that, hence, they can determine the free and reduced, where we don't have that kind of data. The only data that the state has is free and reduced
Right.
from our youngsters and dependent on that application. So think about the challenges there.
So this is a status that they gave me as of today. I don't know what category eligible and extended benefits represent. I didn't get a chance to ask that because I did this close to the end of the day, and it was the first day of lunch.
There are some
could
cases
surmise.
where Donna can bring to me a family that's struggling for whatever reasons, may not have met the criteria for the cutoff for free and reduced, and I have the authority to be able to grant that.
Are new citizens eligible, or new Americans, or the people who have not obtained citizenship
Right.
eligible for free and reduced lunch?
Of course, there's
Okay.
students in our school, so that's where our English language, our family liaisons work
Yeah.
with them to make sure that they have it. I think that group is actually in good shape,
Okay.
because they have people right there with them. And the folks from Essentia, right? Kathy Ketchell, I think of her, and she's really good about staying on top of a lot of that. So it's that other group that we're missing.
So the one I highlight is the direct cert. We get a file every month from the state. They're the ones that are on state benefits, and we import that into our system. So if you had to go to a bare minimum of a free lunch program, and you could count on the direct cert at a minimum of what you'd get for revenue from the state in your adequacy, because they're in that ADM number. So you're going from 1,400 down to 589. I'm just saying, if we want to be very conservative, income calculated is based on the application. Homeless that's their status of, they're declared homeless, they automatically get it. They're a foster child, they automatically get it. Extended benefits, I would be guessing, I want to say with that, Kathleen, would be something you would do, or some
Would know.
exception of why
Yeah.
they're getting that.
Yeah.
Category eligible, I don't know specifically what that is. I didn't get a chance to ask that, but right now we're at 813, and that is not off from a brand new start of the year, because a lot of these kids, again, have 30 operating days. So I'll be going through to find out, okay, who are the ones that are going to expire. And we send out, it's all in there when we share with the schools. It's just, hey, these are students we're expecting to hear from. That's it. It doesn't indicate their status. And whether they applied before and didn't get it, whether they didn't apply, we put everybody in there. And typically the principals, the schools know who they need to pick. They're great at that. And reaching out. That's why I think you haven't seen much of a dress. You see your ADM and your free and reduced is down pretty comparable, but 14 to 1600, we've been consistent. There's 2 years I would really like to see, because we were held harmless. I don't know what the actuals would be. Okay, so as you go into that, you start thinking, all right, for every kid we get $2,300 in free and reduced. Well, you go to a free meal program. The thing we were talking with Ellen and Kathleen and myself was, if you tried to develop another proxy to determine what a kid's status is, what would you use? Because right now it's free and reduced with the state. We use the free and reduced. If you make it something different, what do? But the state says, we're going to stay free and reduced. Our numbers for financially for Title I and free and reduced differentiated aid for state adequacy are all based on that. So we can't just give up on the application process, even if we said, we want to use something different to determine aid. Doesn't matter what we choose, because the state is using it for the aid.
On the prior slide, I noticed that you had a category for foster and homeless.
Yeah.
Are those automatic?
Yeah.
And the state recognizes that?
Yeah.
So that 589 actually becomes 600. Out of,
Yeah, true.
So we got 213 that are potentially being lost someplace.
Potentially. So when we look at the potential impact, I think you had asked me, just if we look at the program, how much more would we need to pick up? I had estimated about 1.2 million. I'm going to assume we'll get federal aid because we'd still have the application process and still have people that are eligible for free. But now we're just picking up the one meal on the other side of things. But then we start looking at, all right, what if we drop by half the 1,400 and we get down to 700 kids? We're going to lose $700,000 in Title I money. Then, if you take 2,300 per kid and you go from 1,407 down to 700 kids, you're going to lose about 1.6 million in state aid. You're at $3.5 million just to create free meal program. That's the challenge. So we're trying to think how do we work around that. But as you said, there's Massachusetts, Vermont, Michigan was mentioned, California, and Maine, and Ellen's going to send us an article about
we have the
it. We
article.
can reach out to those states and say, how are they
But
doing
tho-
it? The
But
big
those are states, they're doing it, not school districts.
states and states with an income tax. So when you look at that, that's probably there's an easier way to figure out what the need is versus here. If we went to what would she call it, America Community something
Su-
that does
survey.
surveys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's like every 10 years.
No,
the
they
census.
no
What
no.
about the
Well,
census?
the American Community Survey they do every 6 months, or it's a smaller group of it's a sampling as
Sure.
opposed to a
And would that be
census.
good enough?
Recognized by the state.
But it wouldn't be recognized.
Would the
That's what
census?
this is. What?
With the census,
It's not in the formula. It's not in the law, right? I mean, if we did it based on the poverty rate of our community, I don't know how that would compare to
Right.
the what our current figures are for free and reduced lunch, whether we're high or we're low. I mean,
So that's why you look at this and you say if you weren't dependent on that from the beginning, when all of other states used a different formula, and if they had, to me, when they moved to a free and reduced, it wasn't as big of a hit because they were never dependent on it because they used maybe their income, the state income tax and used that to establish
School
need.
districts in New Hampshire decided to try this?
No, according to Donna, no. We asked that.
and she meets with all the directors across the state.
It almost seems to me that it has to be a statewide system.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine that Manchester, Nashua, Rochester, the big cities like us would have trouble struggling getting that information. They just would.
Well, and I
It's-
mentioned if
it's a
you're
huge risk.
able to maintain your free and reduced applications and stay at your 1,400 number, then it wouldn't affect any. That 1.6 and 700,000 would pretty much
not
stay.
be there.
You're down to the 1.2.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the reality is if you say you get a free lunch regardless. How do you incentivize the applications?
which is what we saw during COVID.
Oh, yeah, they were held that way. We were held harmless. I would like to know what we really were at. But if we also didn't push it because they were free, what would it have really been? I don't know. So that's where we struggle with it. That's whether you want us to continue trying to develop something. You want to do this, please?
Well, I'd like us for at least to push, at the legislative level, as I think we suggested at the last school board meeting, that's something worth supporting.
Well, your resolution was accepted, and it'll be on the docket for your state school board delegate assembly in October, and Sarah and John will represent you at that. So we'll see.
One last question. When you're giving us the data, can you differentiate between breakfast? Is it all lunch or is it some of it breakfast too?
Yeah, some of it's breakfast too.
Do you want that differentiation?
Yeah, that'd be good to know.
One other thing, we have a little time. The other thing Donna and I had kicked around was because breakfast participation's not great, do you create the incentive to filling out the application? You could create a free breakfast program to start instead of free everything.
I would like to see the quality of the breakfasts increased a bit, I think. I think a lot of it has to do with what we offer. Unless that's changed in the last few years, but I know it was always prepackaged muffins and
Mhm.
sugary cereals and
Well, she
it's probably
follows,
better than
she
nothing.
follows all the nutrition standards, we talked about that, and I see, when I go over, I see things like, cereal, applesauce, those kinds of things, yogurt.
And it could have changed.
There
since
is,
I've
I
seen it.
won't tell you that there isn't a sweet too, a muffin or something like that with it, but most of the time it looks pretty good. There's always milk, of course.
I'll have to find the slide I did when they
Yeah.
were free versus not. I'm pretty sure the breakfasts were up there
Yeah,
when they were free.
yeah.
Because a lot of parents are saying, wait, my kid ate at home. I ain't paying for them to eat again. But if they
Or
get
they
it's
think-
free, they're not going to care.
Some of them do.
You eat early, you have an early lunch, you
Yeah.
wait
Some
till
of them
lunch,
do.
right.
Yeah.
And I know some of it too is timing and bus arrivals at schools. I know that can be challenging, but just something that we kind of kicked around. If you can
Get you a sample menu.
dive in, just dip your
Maybe a
toe,
sample menu.
see what that looks like. So, okay,
Okay.
I'll move
Anybody
on to
have
state
anything
adequacy. Is that all right?
Yep.
All right. Handout number 2. So handout number 2 is the one that says FY24 adequate education aid. This just is a breakdown of how they derive it. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. You can take it and read it. I just wanted to highlight the revenue that we get based on our numbers. What I had given you on 626 prior to the passage and finalization of the budget versus the number that they gave us. So based on estimates that I gave to the Finance Committee from the LDBA document, they had looked at about 5 million more in 24 and 713,000 on top of that in FY25. Well, for just FY24, we budgeted 14,954,000 in state adequacy. They're telling us 20,918,000, so it's 5.964 million based on the numbers we submitted. The statewide education property tax, no different. So when you look at the total, we're getting 5.964 million more. The only thing I note here, at a minimum, what we want to try to do is restore the trust funds that we pulled all the money out of to try to make this budget work. We took that, you agreed with that risk to saying, if we're going to at least get half of that, we could at least fund the math coach and some other things that you wanted. So we would look at that. Then after that, that balance and what are the things. There's things we're putting together as well just to discuss about.
And that was 2.4 million, was that trust fund money?
I have 2,025,000. I had said 2.4, but when I went back and pulled all the actuals, 2,025,000, and I'll verify to make sure. But I had popped that in my head. So, other things I think about. Remember, we have 2 more years of that outstanding debt to pay back the technology trust fund. Do we want to get rid of that? Do you want to put a little bit more into your stabilization fund as it gets ready for the new middle school? We're also starting to accumulate those bills as it relates to a wildlife study, a traffic study, the architects getting ready for the site selection. So am I pulling that out of the risk reserve, or do you want to continue to have that build and pay a little bit out of this? Because we haven't bonded anything yet. We're going to have to once we start designing. It's going to be a whole different animal.
I mean, speaking for myself, I would like to save as much of it as possible for, so that difference is also available when we come into actually bond payments for the
Yep.
middle school.
Sure.
The exception that I would make is I am seriously disturbed by our test scores and where our kids are after COVID. And, I think we probably didn't dedicate enough of the ESSER funds to learning loss. I know we tried and we couldn't hire. We tried to think that, but I think if the administration had creative, financially irresponsible investments for the next 2 years in how we could help get those kids that are bordering on level 2 to level 3 and those bordering on level 1 to level 2 and get, I would be interested in seeing that. I don't know if others have thoughts.
I would agree. I saw a couple, you sent us an article from the Wall Street Journal that looked at a couple of states that had done some remediation for students, and one of the things that they found to be somewhat helpful was that students who scored low, like in the yellow or red range, were required to do 30-minute small group daily in the subjects that they were falling behind in order to do some catching up. So I think there are some things out there that, you know, as that article also pointed out, we don't have a lot to look at. There isn't a lot of experience out there because it's all so brand new, but, you know, I hope we're looking at some of that stuff. What could we do? I looked at the scores from the third graders last year that were low, and I thought, my goodness, those are fourth graders now, and what are we doing? What are our interventions for those fourth graders now that scored so poorly on the third grade math and reading? And what could we be doing? And are there things that we could and should be doing? So I hope we're thinking about those things and looking into those things, because we will run out of time and money for those kind of things. So.
Tom, Bob?
So it's a given for me that we put the 2,025,000 in.
Yeah.
That's pretty simple. I like those ideas. You know, it would be up to Kathleen to help us find something that we're gonna be able to do and get results. You know, just, and those are not easy to find in education all the time, really, you know. But at any rate, that aside, and I like the board member Emmons' approach that we put aside some for a rainy day. We have a middle school we'd like to build, and
We have another little surprise for you
okay, and
that you had asked about.
and I absolutely can't remember the next thing I was gonna say, so we'll move on from there. I know what it was. That regardless, I think we need to bring this to the full board.
Oh, yeah.
For
yeah,
discussion.
Yeah. And I think we're going to have
Yeah,
those
so
conversations in
I have a
September,
slide at the
October.
end, talks about upcoming meetings. There's one September 11th, October 18th is finance, and then the big one with the board making
October
its
30th.
decision to finalize the tax rate
In
once we
October.
get the valuation. So
Yeah.
you have at least a minimum 2 more meetings, but you want something else.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
put
I
together.
think we need to give you some direction.
But yeah,
My
we'll
only-
provide
my
out.
only thought is, I would be happy to spend the money to get the scores up, and the evaluations up, but I am a little cautious about spending money just to spend money, and wonder about whether the results are there or not. I mean, I'm not on the instructional committee. I think it's something that maybe ought to be brought to them and discussed more fully, certainly on the staff level. I agree. I mean, the 2 million gets paid back, and I don't think it's a bad idea to put some money in a rainy day fund as well, because I suspect there will be some rainy days.
Yes.
So.
No, I agree, and I think it has to be a plan that works. I do think what data there is tutoring, whether it's during the school day or after school, works. And there's some, so what, but whether it's something we can pull off, that's also another question. And I know Kathleen has said that there may be federal maintenance of effort issues, but we also have ESSER funds that we're using for other things, and we can always move money,
Yeah.
switch money over if it makes it easier. And might be worth doing so the federal government.
It's a good problem to have.
I mean, it's nearly
Oh,
$4
it
million
really is.
dollars.
It's a great problem.
We lost the workforce, when the teachers retired, lots of teachers just didn't come back. Lots of them used to stay around, and they would do, 10 or 15 hours a week. That's where you found your tutors. They were trained, they understood how to teach reading and math. You have to have people who understand how to what the pedagogy is of teaching. So that's been our challenge, is trying to find those people. And you know, we still have tutor openings now. So, but we did, you know, when we discovered tutors missing at Abbott Downing, we had 2 of them because they lost their Title I funds. So we used one this year. We kept them. We used the ESSA funds, and then we also used my contingency that you have set aside for me to use when we needed it. So we have continued to cover, but it has been difficult finding those folks. Some school districts, and I really like this idea, and it has to do with a very robust summer program, which I thought they did a good job this year getting kids to summer school. Our numbers were up in summer school. I'll be anxious to see how they do in their first data, when we do our first data review. And then the second piece is extending the school year and having kids, and they do that a lot. One of the articles, I think it was in the Washington Post, talked about Texas. Well, the problem in Texas is the buildings are air conditioned. You know, and I mean, I can't get into June, and everybody wants me to shut down, right? So we do have challenges, but there are answers. It's just, you know, using your money in a way, like you said, Bob, that is going to net results.
Right. So can we plan, and maybe it's a joint finance instructional committee meeting at the end of September, where before we get into the budget, you can present a proposal that doesn't use all of the money, but uses, you know, a responsible portion on a program that the administration and our principals and teachers think can help students. And if you have it earlier, I'm sure we'd love to have that conversation earlier.
And you have been putting things into place. I mean, just by the fact that you put Haggerty into kindergarten with a strong approach to the phonics and building up phonics, and which is the foundation for your reading. You know, you just put that in across the boards last year, so we're hoping that you'll see some bang for your buck. Then we turned and we did foundations in grades 1, 2, and 3. Those weren't in place. So you've done some things to put program in place, which the resources for the teacher to use. But I don't have the answers yet for you as to whether.
I hope that helps those kids that are coming up. I'm worried.
You're worried about the middle ones.
The middle ones,
the 4 and 5s.
You know, the kids who. I mean, I think we've seen it on a lot of grade levels, and there's kids that need help. But I think there are kids who lost a couple of really fundamental years that needs help catching up. Or we're going to be talking about, because we saw it last year in their assessment scores, and then we saw them go into the next grade, and you know, we can't just watch them until high school not get there.
Right. One of the things that I asked them to do for me was to give me growth. How did the kids grow? Achievement is important, but did they show growth? And so if I'm a first grader, 1.0, first grader, first month, right, 1.1. Did I grow so that the next time I took it, I was at 2.1? Did I grow those months? Well, we have a good growth. We are seeing growth. The problem is we have this discrepancy of anywhere from 6 to 12 to 15 months of a gap. How do you make that gap up when in the course of a school year, as a teacher, you have a year's growth, you've done your job, right? So those are the challenges that we have in terms of making up for those 6, 12, or 15-month gaps. And we've done a little bit of it, but not enough. And we saw that in this year's test scores.
And this is not for now, but more for the next budget, but I'm going to put my plug in that I would hope before we get to the budget, the instructional committee has talked about a plan for foreign languages at the middle school.
We have added that to the agenda for next year.
I would love that.
I don't think we should wait until we have a new middle school.
Yeah.
That is on the list of topics brought up this year, yes.
Tricky finding teachers for that, but
Right.
but
we
it's
have
absolutely worthwhile.
We have a great group that do it now, in German and Spanish. I just want to see all of the kids starting in 6th grade be exposed to it. It's so important for them, and build up so that when they're in 8th grade, then if they take the class, they go right on to level 2 in high school, so that they can really bridge that language And like in math, the high school's working very closely with the middle school in math. We could see the same thing in foreign language, in world language.
I think too, and this is pie in the sky, but why not? When we looked at our extended year program numbers, we had a real small group from middle school. Those are kids that you were just talking about. That age group still responds to rewards and gratifications. There's got to be somebody and some program out there that is getting middle school kids to come back in the summer to help themselves get better scores. And I'd like us to be able to see if we could find that or those.
Your 21C is really focused at middle school, you know, and Sue Farley has been doing a lot of work, and you're right, she really has connected with those youngsters, and we have seen more youngsters participate. Not to the level that you described. We want to increase that.
Sure.
But part of 21C is related to their academics. It isn't just, you know, we're going to cook or we're going to play games or we're going to, you know, whatever. They also have a tie to their program is around academics. So, you know what, I'm going to have Sue put together a little program and bring it in and let you see it.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, middle
Yeah.
school kids, you know, from my knowledge and past, they just love to be together and do stuff. And
My understanding is that this summer, the topics or the theme for the middle school was Space Odyssey, which was incredibly effective because it's something that the students care deeply about. There was a lot more interest in the program, and I think that we start there and we keep building that, and Sue is very, very good at doing that. So I think, you know, maybe next year there'll be even more interest, and so.
I think the interest will snag the interest because we have that bike program and we have like 20-something bikes ready to go. We had the teacher trained. We have Sue's also been trained. So I talked to Ellen today and they're ready to put the bikes together and get them up to, it's all for the middle school. So I think it's a hook. It's a hook for them, right? And
it
so
will work.
that you're right. That's what we want to do for them, to get them in. Because, you know, if you just tell them that they're going to come to summer school to do math and reading, you may have a challenge. They're not perhaps going to jump at that opportunity.
They're not jumping on that bus.
And I love them to death, but that's a tough one.
No,
You've been there, you know.
I do. I do know that there are staff out there who connect with middle school kids, and we can get those people to do what we need.
You know, you brought up a good point. You know, during the pandemic, we did not have a lot of some people who participated in summer school. Teachers were not. Do you remember that? We had really trouble. We had low numbers. We were concerned about that.
Yeah.
But this year, we didn't have any problem hiring teachers over the summer for our programs. They did come back this year and spent a lot of time with summer school. So that is another factor that we, you know, you don't think about, you know, but this year we were fully staffed in the summer.
So before I go on to the stirring the pot as it
Oh,
relates to
jeez.
funds, on the next item, I want to mention two things that I didn't have in here, or I had my little notes on the side of the one is you still are going to have a year-end balance from 23, and it will be above the 2.2 that you need. I will tell you that. I can't have a number for you, but it will be above. So you'll have to deal with that money, because if you don't appropriate it, it automatically goes back. Second thing is at the year end, we, if you remember the musical instruments, there was a discussion about that at some point.
Yep.
We funded replacing all the elementary. We're going to look to, with some additional funds, either year end or that, fund the middle school and the high school, and that would take care of the whole district. And getting rid of instruments that are 20, 25 years. So we were able to do it with some premium holiday money and stuff, and I could at least get the elementary schools done. I saw Hoffs today. I said, yep, they got the complete list. Okay. But we had said we'd wait to bring the middle school and the high school to you folks.
I do hope that when they start up the music programs for the year that they advertise that there are instruments available and not just for rent, because I think not knowing that is a,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
another
it's,
equity issue.
yeah.
Okay. And we'll have them, we should probably look to have them come present so that you hear directly from them. Okay. But we knew that that came up before, and there had been a need, and we took care of part of it. I'm gonna ask you to consider taking care of the other half.
We
Okay.
could have Gabe and Bryn come
Yep.
to present.
Yep.
I got that note.
Okay?
Yep.
So you know. All right, HVAC, a lot of this is just a rehash of what we talked about at the 626 meeting, so it's not like I'm going over a lot. Again, we had talked about bonding and doing a bond anticipation note for this. You authorized in the bonding process, so I'm not gonna get too deep. It's just a repeat of the 626 meeting, but if you wanted to go back and discuss something, we can. But if we remember, we talked about funding Beaver Meadow at 3.5 and the high school at 1.7. And you had, and we talked about the possibility of doing some buses when we go to a bond. And we told you about what that payment would be. Part of the questions you had from that 626 meeting was maybe going further than just doing 5 air handlers at the high school. But you had authorized to reimburse. You did that at the July meeting when I was away. And I wanted to make sure, see if you had any questions as it related to that, because I know it was tough with me being remote in a way, if you did have questions, but I appreciate you doing that. And we have time to do that authorization. We're currently using our cash now, and I cleared that with the auditors, saying I got it, but I have a time period in which that authorization is good. And there's no point in running out and paying interest if we don't have to, especially when you have a good amount of money in the bank, when you still want to know the answer to that other decision of, are you going to redo the whole high school? So I've been given a number today. So I figured
Is it sealed? Hermetically sealed?
it is. I'm going to have Monty Hall come out and do
It's a big one.
do a number one. So
It's
again, you approved that resolution. That's still sitting. I have not acted on that at the moment. But in the summer of 2024, both Broken Ground and Beaver Meadow will be fully replaced. This year, they're doing prep work for that. Matt will have a capital facilities and talk to you more about it. I didn't feel that was appropriate for this meeting. And then we will also upgrade the 2 AC units that are in the server room as part of this process. In addition, as of right now, they will replace the 5 units that we had proposed.
And that's in the 588,000 estimated bond payment that you
Yes,
set up? Okay.
correct. So, if you wanted to take the next step, and again, those 5 units was encompassing of this, okay? If you want to take the next step and do the high school, which would be already the 5 units, that's 1.7. You'd replace and install all new units, which I think is about 22 units. It would include a complete retrofit and upgrade of Concord High with all new controls, all electrical upgraded, a new transformer. That would happen in the summer of 2025. 16.2 million. I think if you remember me saying, they give me a rough number before they started digging in of 22 million. That, and all they were doing is taking a square foot number, which is about 545,000 square feet of that building, and came up with that off the wall number. This is what they're starting to come down. And I think this will go down further. The question is, do you want to move forward with doing that?
Jack, is it 16.2
Plus 1.7.
plus 1.7?
Which you're already,
Yeah.
which we're already planning to do on the bond anticipation note, but if you decided to do this, I would just do the bond directly.
Well, I would say, I was at the high school for the new teacher orientation a couple of weeks ago. The library was lovely. The rest of the school was uncomfortable.
I could probably lower the number to 15.9 and we just won't do the library.
Well, the library had air
Yeah.
conditioning.
Yeah, there are some,
Totally even
there are
better.
some spots that have air conditioning, cause
And
they're open all
obvious-
summer.
Obviously, I put a bond schedule, show you what that would look like, but do you want me to start putting that together?
I mean, I think we had some other questions about the potential costs if we lost one of these units that we weren't replacing. But I guess the question is it 17.9 million in summer of 25, or is it, what's the replacement schedule otherwise? When do we have to replace them all by?
Well, they're over 30 years,
So we
they're
ha-
due. A lot of this is,
So-
again, you put the budgets, but
So is it cheaper to do it every 2 years, or is it
I
do
see.
5 over?
well, in my opinion, it's cheaper to blow it all out now. It's like when we built the
Well,
elementary
one
schools,
of the-
it's economies of scale.
I kind of wish Matt were here, but one of my questions on something like this always is, if we replace it all now, then it's all gonna get old at the same time
Yeah.
next time.
Sure.
Is it wiser, again, to phase it
Stagger
over
it.
a few years?
Mhm.
Or is it, like you say, maybe better just to do it? And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I'm strongly in favor of getting all of our schools up to speed with necessary air handling.
Mhm.
Again, I just don't know whether we should be jumping in all at once or
I
doing
mean-
it piecemeal.
Can you do a
On schedule, payment schedule?
yes or estimates
Yep.
for us of what the cost is doing it at once versus doing it
Staggering.
over
Sure.
4 years
Yep.
or 6 years?
Mhm.
I think that would be helpful, and this might be something that capital facilities needs to
Dig
see as well.
Mhm.
I think this discussion started out here because of the bond issue for the 5, but
And they had told me they'd have a tighter number by November, but they were able to move quicker, and I thought, let me at least hit you early with it. You don't have to make a decision, but
Just remind me too, I mean, I know we've got the other schools already scheduled, but where does that leave us with Beaver Meadow or whatever?
they're next summer, they're happening.
Okay, that's happening.
Yep.
Whatever the other schools are, when are we gonna need to do those?
Well, Abbott Downing's 10 years old, so we should get
Yeah.
at least another, Abbott Downing, Krista McCall from Millbrook, so you should get at least another 15, 20 out of those.
Okay.
This would be the last one. Runlet I don't count because that's a
No,
new
we're-
school.
Yeah.
This would be the last of the older schools to be done.
Jack, what, in your 11 years' experience, what's been the useful life of these things?
They were all here before I was here.
Yeah.
But 25, 30 years is what you get out. And 96 they did the addition, so it's going to
I
be
mean,
30 years in 2-3
I
years.
certainly hear what both Pam and Bob are talking about, I suppose there's a possibility that 3 or 4 or 5 of them go down over the course of a 2-year period while we're trying to move to build Runlet Middle School. And so then we come to the public with our hat in our hands and say, these were gonna go and we just didn't know when.
and I think that was, I'm not sure if you were here that meeting. I know Jim Richards was here filling in for someone, so I'm not sure who, but I think that was our discussion, what is our risk of failure, and then we can't use the school.
Well, I mean,
And
train
it
is
seems
here
high.
all the time. From the bills, which I'll bring. you.
Every day.
They are.
That was the
Working
other
on it.
question we had, how much are we spending on repairs?
Right,
That was
and-
question.
I will bring you that.
I thought Matt brought you that.
No, we haven't
information.
gotten that
Okay.
information,
We will
unless
give
it was
that.
when I was away.
We will give you that.
I
And
don't
it's,
think we got it yet.
we will give you that. But yeah, as soon as the unit fails, no matter what school it is, they're right there. Whether it's a real build a motor or fan, belts, I mean, we have a basic maintenance contract, which they come in and change the filters every quarter. That's $107,000 just to replace filters. And that's done throughout the whole district. And then there's a maintenance contract just to come in, make sure everything is running right. Usually when they come in, they hear something, these guys know. And they gotta fix something, a belt or motor or bearing, something.
Well, the
And
question,
post-COVID, it's just really exacerbated.
the question for today is,
Yeah.
should we explore bonding $16 million? I'd support exploring that. Whether we actually do it is a different issue.
Sure.
So, but I think it'd be helpful to get that and again, to also understand if it's gonna cost us significantly more to phase it over a few years, you know, what the risks are on that.
I think one of the discussions we had too, and again, I do think this needs to go to HEPA, was that the cooling aspects of the climate control aspects of the system couldn't be turned on until the whole building was replaced.
Correct.
Oh, right.
So, you know, in terms of summer heat and use, that we'd have this system that we couldn't turn on for 5-6 years.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you remembered that
Yeah.
because,
Yeah, it is.
we could do a phase-in program and then have those
then
things
just have
sitting
them
there
sit there.
idle, not doing their full capacity.
Yeah.
So that's a big factor.
Yep. And I'll show you where your debt's falling off. I'll have the middle school project in there, variety of different options,
And
so that we
Okay.
kind of keep that debt, you know,
And I
little
know-
heart rates.
I know we don't know yet, but I think we have ideas. We should also include Memorial Field.
I was just gonna say that.
in when we're looking at potential debt
Sure.
projections.
Yep.
Jack, what about the windows at the high school? If we start to do conditioned air, and I say it that way because it's really not air conditioning, but are our windows,
That's a Matt question. I don't know. I mean, I know we've replaced some big windows over the last couple of years
Yeah.
in the Commons. We got one right now above CRTC we're doing. But he would be able to tell that. In the engineer report, when they're all done, we'll be able to say how they have to throttle the building based on insulation, wall density, all that
Right.
stuff. But that would be a Matt thing. And we could have a joint meeting and lay all this out, and you can give us direction.
I mean, that would
you got
be-
time. That's the beauty right now. We just
I think
you
it
have a
may-
little time.
I think it might be wise to have a joint meeting with facilities, or at least wish to have.
So
that.
we need a
Come and
joint
talk.
meeting with facilities and a joint meeting with instructionals.
we're just,
Why don't you
We're gonna be
guys-
busy next month.
You
It's
should
just-
be
it's
coming
just
to
meetings
all the
that-
meetings.
Yeah.
Just meetings, it's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Well, just look at your calendar now.
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
Just saying.
All right, so you at least have a number that they felt comfortable giving me and say, you can say it. But we will drive that down more, because I've already had the discussion.
And it would be good to know, I don't know if there's any grants that would be potential for this,
Ellen's looking.
or any energy savings that could offset some of this cost. I feel like Matt once said that they actually cost more to run, but
They will, because now you're gonna be condensing the air.
we
So we'll
also,
have higher energy
I also know
costs.
that there's a lot of window units and other things operating in the high school,
Yes, there is.
so,
Okay?
okay.
good.
Anything else, Jack?
Just the upcoming meetings, as I mentioned. So we have September 11th. We'll talk about, again, estate adequacy, and I talk about in general because there's additional funds. The FY23 year-end balance, we should know that more clearly then. And if there's anything else that the committee wants to discuss, we'll discuss that then.
Okay.
And I can send an email. and
I
you
guess
can
the question
reply.
is,
Yep.
September 11th, what we've asked for here, do you need more time for that, Kathleen? On the use of the funds?
Well, for us, you mean for the
Yeah.
for the
Well, you
committee?
still have the 18th.
Right,
And then you talked about having an instructional, so.
So
oh,
maybe,
just in
yeah,
general.
so
I don't-
I'm just wondering if we
That's
need,
tight when you think
I'm
the
wondering
next
if we
week's a
need,
short week.
if we're gonna need the September 11th meeting, or we should figure out another time, but we can chat about that.
Yeah, we can chat about that at your board meeting on the 5th. How about
Okay.
that, when we look at
Sounds
the
good.
calendar, okay? Because you do have a lot of things coming up
Yep.
that you need to talk about.
So the 18th is where we would look for your committee to recommend to the school
Yeah,
board
that's
to
a
make,
good meeting.
to finalize the 24 budget. And then Monday, October 30th, and I'll reach out to see, I'd like to try to move that back to Wednesday, the 25th, I believe. But I go as late as I can, because I don't know when I'm gonna get the valuation. And they have a new person, this is their second year. If he says, oh, you'll have it way before the 25th, then I'll move it back so I give time for minutes. Because I know November 1st they need to get going, so I try to be conscious of what they need. And then I want to just highlight these meetings, which I copied as I didn't finish this. See that? Shows where I got sidetracked. I wanted the 27th and then the 28th with the Zoom, so I apologize. But the 27th is the site selection at Millbrook, and the 28th
I
should
think
just
it's the
be.
26th and
I
the
thought it was the
27th.
26th.
Don't ignore
And
it.
the 26th is the Tuesday.
Okay. Yes.
What,
the
the,
26th is a Tuesday.
What, the
I'm
project?
gonna edit this now.
It's on the
'cause you know what?
26th is the face-to-face, 6
Yeah.
o'clock,
Correct.
and then the
I don't-
Zoom meeting is on the 27th.
I am
Remember, we
gonna
moved
fix
it
this
because
now.
of Yom Kippur. I missed that. It goes till Monday at 6:30 or something,
Right.
you know, so I was looking at Sunday and thinking, oh, we're all set. Wrong.
So there, I have fixed that, and I will update the one that gets posted. Now I'm right. Am I right?
Yes.
On that? Okay. So, and then finally, the Memorial Field, we're hosting that jointly with the city. I think there's a flyer that I handed out.
Yeah.
Yep.
They sent that today, so you have that. I think Kathleen's gonna send that out.
I just
to-
sent another one out to, I did a draft, sent it to Steve and to Tim, around this event, trying to get people to understand, you know, what the purpose of the meeting is. It isn't just to hear the preliminary reports on the some of the testing they've done, but also to hear from the people who are out lighting and all the issues over there. So I put another
Although-
letter together.
Visioning charrette to me sounds like people sitting at tables doing work.
That is not the way, I
Okay.
know they have that, but it's not, we're using the auditorium.
Yeah,
We're
that's
sitting
what-
in, yeah. I think they just want to hear from people what they'd like to see at
Okay.
Memorial Field.
All right.
And they're kind of using that term, charrette. So I sent out, and I have one to go out. They have a really good website on the Recreation Department, so I'll attach that. I'll put that in as a link, and also a link to this flyer, so we'll get the word out for people to attend. I'm ready to do another handout or another message out around our 2 hearings at the end of September. So I've done one, I'll do another one. I'm going to use Channel 6, Concord TV, to do some of these things, and then we can video it and then put it right on our site. So
Okay. Is there anything else?
I would just mention, particular matters, but I'm not gonna be around the last week of October.
Last week of October?
Yeah.
Well, it does matter because
I need 7 in
we
the
need 7
affirmative.
votes. So when do you leave?
We're leaving on the 21st and coming back on the 31st.
Okay.
Anyone else?
We'll need to make sure we have a
we'll make
good
sure we have
inventory of
everybody.
Wait a minute,
members.
what's the date that you want?
I had
30th.
October
Right
30th
here.
or the
I'm
25th.
back, I think, by
What about the 25th?
Yeah, well, we want to make sure Jonathan is the other one that sometimes he has school on Monday night.
Is it possible to do a phone vote?
If we have
Are
that
you
avoid if we have to.
possible
I'll
to
try
do
to
a
avoid it
phone
if I
vote?
can, but
I'm in London.
oh.
So we could wake him up in the
Yeah,
middle
I was
of the
gonna
night
say,
to
I
do
love
it.
those 4 o'clock.
So is it 7? Are we doing 5:30 London time or? Yeah.
Either we get up early or he does.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get a census and I'll find out from the state. Hey, if the cities are earlier, I'll try to do it earlier
Sure.
than that if I can. I'm just trying to have you have your finance committee meeting prior. 7 o'clock, bingo.
Perfect.
All right, hearing, if there's no other business, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Hastings, seconded by Mr. Cotton. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great
You're
meeting.
adjourned.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good meeting, yes.